Today is the sixth day of this March 2023 seven-day session. And today we'll take up a koan from the Mumonkan, number 13, Tokusan carries his bowls. And the case reads like this. One day, Tokusan came down to the dining room carrying his bowls. Seppo, the cook, called out to him, "Old master, where are you going with your bowls when the bell has not rung and the drum has not sounded?" Tokusan turned at once and went back to his own room. Seppo told this occurrence to Ganto, who remarked, "Great master though he is, Tokusan has not yet grasped the last word of Zen." Hearing of this, Tokusan sent his attendant to ask Ganto to come and said to him, "Do you not approve of me?" Ganto leaned over and whispered his reply to him. Tokusan said nothing further. The next day in his teisho, Tokusan was different from usual. Ganto, going towards the front of the hall, clapping his hands and laughing, said, "What a happy thing! The old man has now grasped the last word of Zen. From now on, nobody will be able to get the better of him." That's the case, and we'll take up the commentary in the verse later. At the time of this story, Tokusan, or Daishan, is his Chinese name, his actual name. By the way, Ganto is Yanto, and Seppo is Suifeng. Both their Chinese names. But since a lot of what I've got is in the Japanese version, we'll just stick with Tokusan and Ganto and Seppo. Three pretty famous guys. So at the time, Tokusan was about 80 years old, something like this. It's actually 3 years before his death. So he's an old man. He's the old guy. But maybe it's good to appreciate what this guy was when he was young. This is the Tokusan who appears in case number 28 of the Mumonkan. Ryutan blows out a candle. And I'm going to just pick up what's in the commentary, because this is a good description of who this guy was when he first came to Zen. Mumon says, "Before Tokusan left his native place, his mind burned and his tongue was sharp. He confidently came to the south in order to stamp out the special transmission outside the sutras." Of course, that's the slogan of the Zen school. When he reached the road to Reishu, I think that's Longtan is the Chinese, he asked an old woman at a roadside tea stand for something to refresh the mind. This is actually the name, I guess the colloquial name for dumplings, mind fresheners or mind refreshers. And the old woman said, "Venerable monk, what are all those books you're carrying on your back?" And he was loaded down. Tokusan was a commentator on the Diamond Sutra, an expert. And when he went south to exterminate the devils, he brought all his commentaries along with him. So he's loaded up. And the woman notices and says, well, what are those notes? And commentaries on the Diamond Sutra. Actually, what are those notes? And Tokusan said, they're my notes and commentaries on the Diamond Sutra. And the woman said, oh, I hear it is said in that sutra, past mind cannot be grasped, present mind cannot be grasped, future mind cannot be grasped. Now, which mind, venerable monk, are you going to have refreshed? Tokusan was dumbfounded and unable to answer. Even so, he did not die the great death at the old woman's words, and finally asked her, is there a Zen teacher nearby? The woman replied, Rutan lives 5 miles from here. And Tokusan headed there. It says here, arriving at Rutan's monastery, Tokusan was deflated. What's remarkable here is how he was able to take this to heart. Here he's coming down, this special expert, full of vim and vigor, ready to take on all challengers. And when this old woman throws up her seemingly simple question, he takes it to heart. Remember that he knows that the Diamond Sutra is long and profound. I'm sure he had access to a lot of reasoning and commentary and could have said a few things. Present mind, past mind, future mind. But he was awake. He saw that he didn't know. When you don't know, say you don't know. This koan, this particular koan, describes Tokusan's awakening in his meeting with Ryutan. We probably don't have time to go into that. But I just want to read what he was like after his meeting when he came to his awakening. The next day, Ryutan, the teacher, entered the hall and declared to the assembly, among you there is a fellow whose teeth are like swords and whose mouth is like a bowl of blood. Strike him with a stick and he won't turn his head. One day he will climb to the highest of all peaks and establish our way there. Tokusan then placed his notes and commentaries on the Diamond Sutra in front of the Dharma hall and holding up a torch declared, even though one masters various profound teachings, it is like placing a single hair in vast space. Even if one gains all the essential knowledge in the world, it's like throwing a drop of water into a deep ravine. And with that, he set fire to his books. And then making his bows, he left. We see Tokusan in other koans after this awakening, visiting other monasteries. And he gained a reputation as a stern teacher. He was famous for saying, if you can give me a word, I'll give you 30 blows of my stick. If you can't give me a word, I'll give you 30 blows of my stick. Here he is today, quiet old man. Empty. You wouldn't describe him as a fellow with a mouth full of blood. But he still is iron through and through. When Ryotan said, hit him with a stick and he won't turn his head, can you see how that leads to criticize him and you won't even ruffle a feather? Seppo says to him in our koan, Old master, where are you going with your bowls when the bell is not rung and the drum is not sounded? What's wrong with you? Tokusan, completely empty, turns and goes back to his room. This is the same guy. Now he's old. But still, nothing to defend. I read a commentary or a little verse written it's quoted by Shibayama in his commentary on this koan about this nature of Tokusan. It says, as the wind sways the pussy willows, velvet beads wave through the air. As the rain falls on the pear blossoms, white butterflies fill the sky. Moving through his life so smoothly, so empty. Some other master commented, he stealthily goes under heaven and quietly walks the earth. This is the culmination of a lifetime of refinement. This is the beauty, the dignity of an old monk or an old practitioner. There's a little passage that we didn't read from Shengyan. He says, one day when I was a young monk, I met a very old and highly respected Dharma master. Whenever he said anything, everybody listened to him with great respect. I admired him so much that I even envied him a bit. I said to him, I wish I could get older more quickly so that people would listen to me like they listen to you. The old Dharma master smiled and said, well, yes, it is true that people listen to me nowadays. It's about time they did so. I am about to die. In Buddhism, there is a saying that monks should never be afraid of getting old, because when they are truly antique, they will be treated like treasure. People think a monk has a deep practice because he has meditated for so many years, so they respect him and make him into a jewel. A wise old master might even receive the title national treasure. Naturally, once you are a national treasure, you are very close to death. By the time everyone is listening to you, you will not have many days more in this life. And still no fuss. It's just something wonderful about the transition from this amazing phenomenon, this man who went south, long journey on foot in order to root out the demons of the Zen school. He said, I think I'll exterminate them to repay the kindness of the Buddha. Sort of like a conquistador. And then on his way, just like Saul in the Bible, he had a conversion experience. Everything changed. He became a true Dharma vessel. So remarkable about someone like this, and not to this degree, certainly, but we see it often in older people. I'm still young, by the way. There's nothing they need to defend. They're, as we said the other day, they're comfortable in their own skin. If you correct them, they move with the correction. They're not affected by what are called the 8 worldly winds. Can't remember what all the different winds are, but gain and loss, praise and blame, those are certainly 4 of them. There's a story about a famous Chinese poet who lived across a river, pretty wide river, from a famous Zen master, and they were good friends. And one day he came over to the master's side to visit him, and the master wasn't there. He was out somewhere. And so he left a little note, I came and you weren't here. And then he signed it. Not sure what his name is, but I'll call him Li Po, just because that's a name that pops into my mind. He signed it, Li Po, the great Zen adept who was unmoved by the 8 worldly winds. And when the master came back and saw his note, he sent a note back across the river with just one word. It's the word for fart. And it wended its way across the river and hit its target, and the poet came steaming back and said, "We are such good friends. We've always been. How could you show such disrespect?" And the master seemed generally puzzled, and he said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he showed him the note and the word fart, and the master said, "Oh, the great adept Li Po, blown across the river by a puff of wind from the anus." So we've got Tokusan, and then there's 2 other actors in this play. Their Japanese names are Ganto and Seppo, very famous. Many descendants, especially of Seppo. of the two of them, Ganto was senior, although when I looked it up, he's a little bit younger than Seppo. But Seppo's role, of course, was, as we saw, the head cook in the monastery. And Ganto, I don't know, perhaps he was something like head of Zendo, whatever the titles were. And they were fast friends. And in a way, Ganto was Seppo's second teacher. He was quite a seasoned monk, quite capable and adept, as we can see in this koan. There's a story about the two of them. Took place after this koan, after he'd messed with Seppo's mind, as we saw in the case, looking for the last word of Zen. So a few years later, the two of them were traveling together in a snowstorm. I'm reading now from Zen's Chinese Heritage, this compendium put together by Andy Ferguson, ancient Chinese masters. I'm going to translate their names into Japanese so we're consistent. So when Seppo was traveling with Ganto on Tortoise Mountain, they were temporarily stuck in an inn during a snowstorm. Each day, Ganto spent the entire day sleeping. Seppo spent each day sitting in Zen meditation, sitting in Zazen. One day, Seppo called out, elder brother, get up." Ganto said, "What is it?" Seppo said, "Don't be idle. Monks on pilgrimage have profound knowledge as their companion. This companion must accompany us at all times, but here today, all you're doing is sleeping." Ganto shot back, "Just eat your fill and sleep. Sitting there in meditation all the time is like becoming some clay figure in a villager's hut. In the future, you'll just spook the men and women of the village." Seppo pointed to his own chest and said, "I feel unease here. I don't dare cheat myself by not practicing diligently." That tension in the chest. How many of us feel that? Something's still blocked. Ganto says, "I always say that someday you'll build a cottage on a lonely mountain peak and expound a great teaching. Yet still you talk like this." And Seppo said, "I'm truly anxious." Ganto said, "If that's really so, then reveal your understanding, and where it is correct, I'll confirm it for you. Where it's incorrect, I'll root it out." And then Seppo proceeded to tell him about various awakening experiences that he'd had with Tokusan and other times, including one, and he said that moment was like the bottom falling out of a bucket of water. And Ganto said to him, "Haven't you heard it said that," and then he quotes, "what comes in through the front gate isn't the family jewels?" And Seppo said, "Then in the future, what should I do?" And Ganto said, "In the future, if you want to expound a great teaching, that is, if you want to come to complete awakening and help others, then it must flow forth from your own breast. In the future, your teaching and mine will cover heaven and earth." And at this, Seppo had his great enlightenment. He bowed and said, "Elder brother, at last today on Tortoise Mountain, I've attained the way." You can say this is just a culmination of what was started when Seppo boasted about besting Tokusan. These guys were traveling together, probably in part. One, of course, they were friends. They were deeply close, but this was also a dangerous time in China. There were bandits everywhere. This is right at the end of the Tang Dynasty, and not long after the Buddhist persecutions of 845. At that time, Ganto would have been about 17 years old, and it sounds like, from what I've read, he had to leave, like many of the monks, had to leave the monasteries, and he was for a while a ferryman on a lake. Both of these guys became teachers. Ganto did not live as long as Seppo. And let me just tell you the story of his death. It's again from Andy Ferguson. During the chaos at the end of the Tang Dynasty, bandits were to be found everywhere. The congregation, this is at Ganto's temple, the congregation all left the temple to hide in the forest. Ganto alone stayed at the temple where he sat in meditation. So he doesn't just sleep all the time. One day, the head of the bandits came to the temple. Enraged because there was no booty there, he brandished his knife and stabbed Ganto. Ganto remained composed and then let out a resounding scream and died. The sound was heard for 10 miles around. Some hundreds of years later, this story totally threw the great Zen master Hakuin. This was a koan for him. After attaining the way, how could Ganto die like that? Seppo outlived Ganto by quite a bit and had many great disciples, including the great Yunmen, Uman, also appears in the koans repeatedly. This was a rocky period in China, and yet the brilliance, the strength of the Zen school is maybe unsurpassed in the whole history of Zen. When things are difficult, we take them to heart. Great is the matter of birth and death. So let's come back to the koan here. First we have Seppo correcting Tokusan. And then Ganto's well aware that there's nothing, Tokusan is all right to the bottom. You would think, as a compassionate elder brother, he would correct Seppo, straighten him out. But this is more like improv. It says, after Seppo boasts about getting the best of Tokusan, Ganto goes with it. Says, yeah. Great master that he is, he still doesn't have that last word of Zen. He's just taken Seppo and thrown him with his own momentum. And then Tokusan hears about this and sends his attendant to call Ganto and says, "Do you not approve of me?" What do you think? Is Tokusan concerned that maybe he's coming off poorly in others' eyes? This is the man you can hit with a stick and he won't turn his head. And then Ganto leans over and whispers something to him. What is that something? Is that last word of Zen? Well, it seems like it is, because the next day, Tokusan's different. Doesn't say how he's different. Maybe he's more animated than usual. Maybe his eyes twinkle a little more. He's special. Doesn't need to be special. But if it's called for, evidently, he can be special. And then Ganto takes it from there and makes a huge production. What a happy thing. The old man has now grasped the last word of Zen. From now on, nobody will be able to get the better of him. And everybody's scratching their heads. What went on? What happened? What is the last word of Zen? Now we have Mumon coming in with his commentary. As for what is called the last word of Zen, neither Ganto nor Tokusan have ever heard of such a thing, even in a dream. When you look into the matter carefully, they are like puppets on a shelf. Really, this whole thing is like a play, and the maestro is Ganto. It's really kind of dizzyingly brilliant what he's doing here. Then we have Mumon's verse. If you understand the first word of Zen, you understand the last. The last word or the first, it is not a word. We know this. This is the slogan of the Zen school, a teaching beyond words and letters. This is why Tokusan first came to the south, to root out the Zen devils. Their disregard for the words of the Buddha. So if Zen is not a word, and if there is no last word of Zen, then what is it? What is it that can flow out from our breast? What is it that's our true nature at rock bottom? We've had from the very beginning. Everyone. How can we wake up to what we really are? How can we simply be who we really are? The road is plain and simple and direct and straight ahead. We're like one in water crying, I thirst. We're in the last part of Sesshin. We still have over a day. Everyone here sat hard for 6 days. What can we find? What can we let go of? What can we release? What is clearly shown to our eyes? Time is up. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.